And I'm joined now by the President of Israel, Isaac Herzog. Mr. President, thank you very much indeed for joining me. I appreciate you're obviously very busy at the moment, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us. Let me start by taking you back to October the 7th, the day that was a catalyst for this new war. Where were you that day, and when did you hear about what had happened?
It was 6:30 in the morning. I was planning to wake up at around 7:30 because it was a holiday, a Saturday and a vacation. Actually, the entire week before was a national vacation because it was the Feast of Tabernacles. And I was planning to go to synagogue to celebrate the new opening of the Bible as we read each week a portion of the Bible. And so it was Genesis. And sirens broke. The silence in the entire neighborhood were torn to pieces by immense sirens and then booms and booms and booms. We immediately realized that we are under missile attack. It was a huge missile attack. In hindsight, we know that there was well over 2,000 missiles launched at all of Israel from Gaza. And the shock was huge, but we ran to the shelters. But we didn't know whether there was anything else. We assumed, okay, missile attack for some reason. I was telling my wife there's a missile attack. And then we opened the TV and started getting the news, endless news about atrocities all throughout our southern border, about people being locked in shelters and burned and under attack. And they call the emergency services. They call the studios of television. They speak to the anchorman who's on TV and say, "Save us, help us, help us. We're under attack. We're being butchered. We hear the enemy. We hear Arabic behind the door, etc., etc." And all hell broke loose. We've gone through the worst atrocity as a nation since the establishment of the State of Israel, the highest amount of Jews killed since the Holocaust, about 8 or 9 times 9/11 in terms of our national proportion of casualties, but it doesn't end. The cup is filled with poison. It doesn't end. We meet families all the time. I met the Almog Goldstein family. You have 3 generations, grandparents, parents, children, and many abducted and also killed and missing. And it goes on and on and on all the time.
You wrote a piece in the New York Times about this, and you talked about going to one of the kibbutz which were attacked and how you had to wash blood off your shoes and how the meetings you had with the families of those who've been taken hostage were the most difficult meetings of your life. Tell me about that.
In Be'eri, when I went in to see the havoc, the atrocities, the burning homes, in one of the homes, when I walked in, there was a pool of blood still drying. There were scalps. There was a woman's scalps with a rake holding it. That shows how atrocious these people were, how villains they are, how crazy, animalistic and barbaric and sadistic they are. And you walk and the house is totally ruined, but you see a picture of grandparents and parents and children hanging on the security room where they had their shelter, and the shelter was, of course, totally burnt. And I assume they're one of the burning bodies there. I mean, families were tied up in barbed wires and burned together. I could only think what they said to the Almighty before they parted earth. And then I went, and since then I keep on meeting families of the hostages. Endless stories. Why would Kfir, a 9-month-old baby, be hijacked? Now he's already 10. His grandmother told us, sorry, he's 10 months old. Okay? Why would Leah, 3 years old, be hijacked where all her family is being killed? They just took her. And so forth and so on, endless stories of atrocities on the one hand, and the worst of all is not knowing the fate of your loved one on the other hand. A clear crime against humanity, clear genocide took place in that area. Incidentally, the biggest peace-loving area in Israel, where the center of the peace movement was.
Your father, Chaim, who later became President of Israel, and in fact you're the only father and son to ever achieve that highest office, he was in the British Army in World War II as an intelligence officer in the armoured formations. He fought the Nazis. He took part in the Normandy invasion. He helped liberate Holland and Belgium, amongst other things. He helped capture Heinrich Himmler, one of the main architects of the Holocaust. He took part in the liberation of the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp. And he talked about, when he was at Belsen, telling the survivors he was a Jewish officer from Palestine and how they burst into tears at this. And you have said before, I'll never forget how he described to me the horrors that unfolded before his eyes as one of the first liberators of the death camps, including Bergen-Belsen, the human skeletons in the striped pajamas, the hell on earth, the stench, the heart of darkness. And you were asked once what advice you thought your father would give to future generations. And you said, never take the state of Israel for granted. Did you ever imagine, when your father was telling you these stories, that you yourself would walk into a scene like you did in that kibbutz, which was so reminiscent of the horrors of the Holocaust?
Thank you for reminding this to me. It's quite moving for me because my dad always spoke about these moments. My father joined the British Army in order to fight the Nazis. He was a student at Cambridge, and the war broke out. He also served in the Blitz in London as guarding the streets. He always spoke about the immense resilience of the British people under constant attacks. And then, of course, wrote to his parents that he's joining the British Army to fight the Nazi enemy and save Jews. And his experience in Bergen-Belsen, which was one of the greatest horrors of humanity. There were piles of bodies, of skeletons, dead skeletons there. As he depicted the awful smell of the atrocities at Bergen-Belsen. And the fact that when he walked in, truly, the survivors, they thought that he's a Nazi perpetrator. And he had to turn to them in Hebrew and Yiddish, which is a Jewish German language, to tell them, I'm a Jewish officer from the land of Israel coming to save you. And there are still Jews in the world. So that's why it was imprinted in his being, and that's how he passed it on to me and to our families. Never take the Jewish state for granted. This is our safe haven. That's where Jews from all over the world, from well over 100 countries, came forward and reestablished their ancient homeland. And the lesson I took from my father is never, never again. Jews will not accept, the Jewish state will not accept these atrocities within its borders, killing its citizens. And we have complained and said and mentioned endlessly to the world that we are under terror attacks constantly. Almost 10,000 missiles were launched at us since we pulled out of Gaza in 2007, all from Hamas. We've alerted the entire universe and the family of nations that there's an empire of evil from Tehran emanating with a whole culture of hate to eradicate all of us. And I say to my friends all over the world, especially in Europe, guys, if it weren't for us, Europe would be next. Because the culture of hate that these guys have brought forward, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Hamas, and Islamic Jihad, and the Houthis in Yemen, and the entire culture of hate simply wants all of us out. They don't accommodate Jews, Christians, or even moderate Muslims. They are seeing the inclusion of Israel in the region, a vision of peace which we all believe in, as a threat to them. And most importantly, all they want is to chop our heads and get to you guys next. This is the real challenge of the world today.